I'm Ryan Sutton, and today on Inside Games, we'll be taking a look at AEG's Dice City. See you at the table. So today we're taking a look at Dice City. I brought my friend Brett here. We did a couple playthroughs earlier with it to see what he thought about the game and stuff as well. But with Dice City, it's pretty much a dice chucking game. Taking a bunch of dice, throwing them in the box, and then you're placing those dice on your player board to activate certain abilities that will be in your Dice City. Resources are going to be very important. Those resources will help you buy other cards to build statues and manors, watchtowers, things like that. And then when you can activate those, you can use those to fight the player that you're playing against, or bandits that are on the board, or just use the resources to save up enough money to buy trade ships, which all those things can end up making you VP for victory points, and that's how you win the game. So what did you think about the game as we played through a couple of games of it and stuff?
Well, before we even played the game, one of the things that I thought was interesting about Dice City was the name.
All right.
So when I heard the name Dice City, I thought that there was going to be thousands of dice that you were going to be chucking and tons of things to do with dice. That didn't turn out to be the case. You, in fact, get 5 dice when you open up this box per player. But nonetheless, this game has a lot of things to do in it. There's a lot of variety in it, and there's a lot of different ways to win, different avenues to take as you go throughout the game. So even without having tons of dice, it is still a very playable game. It has a lot of replay value.
So what do you think about like the going military with fighting other players versus using that military to fight bandits that's in the game versus just trying to get a bunch of resources and collect those trade ships that you take all your goods in and it gives you VPs at the end?
Well, I think that gives you a lot of playability. There's a lot of different avenues that you can take there. So if there's somebody that likes to kind of compete against the other players, you can use military to do that. So you can build up a strong military, and then you can deactivate sections of the other player's board, which then causes them to kind of slow down their production a little bit. Or you can use those same military to destroy bandits and accrue victory points towards your end game. But at the same time, you could be playing with 4 people, and one person can be just collecting tons and tons of resources.
Yeah.
One person can be just buying victory points. So it allows everybody to have kind of their own strategy, but you're playing with the same cards. You're playing against each other a little bit. There's just tons of avenues that you can take.
So the last game that we played, I went kind of, and I'll show you a picture of my board too, I kind of went the avenue of a little bit of military and a little bit of resources, and I didn't end up winning the game in this particular game. And you went with more of what?
I went with trade ships. So I was building resources quickly and using those resources to buy the trade ships. So one of the key aspects is if 2 trade ships pile go empty, the game ends. So I raced to get the cheapest trade ship and get that one down. And then I built up my board so that I could get the largest trade ship, which is the 20, because once that pile goes gone, the game was over. So I raced to get enough resources to buy those trade ships.
Yeah, I could feel that coming too. So I didn't really combo off my cards very well. The cards can combo because as you build up your resources, you can go in the pool in the middle there of location cards and buy things like watchtowers, manors. You can buy mines, upgrade your lumber mill. Instead of collecting 1 wood per dice that's on the board, collecting 2 to help buy things faster. I felt like your cards that you built comboed off of each other a lot better. Like you had the Merchants Guild and you were playing that off the marketplace.
Yeah, so this was always my end game, was to be able to buy this large trade ship. So the key to this game is this trade ship costs 4 wood, 4 stone, and 4 ore,
Iron, I think.
iron.
Yeah.
But you have to get all of that in one turn, which is very hard. So you have to be able to combo enough cards off of each other to get a lot of resources in a single round. So I was able to do that by combining the marketplace and the merchant guild. So that was my goal from the very beginning, was to try and fill a row with resources for the merchant guild, which we'll show you in a little bit what that card does. And then use the marketplace to be able to accrue a bunch of resources really quick.
All right, well, we'll take a look at Brett's board real quick, and then we'll show my board as well. So here we go. So in Dice City, everybody has a board that looks just like this. So on the board, you've got different colors that are going to be on the left that are going to be associated to the color of dice that you've got. Then there are going to be numbers 1 through 6 on the top that will associate with the number rolled on that color. So for example, if you rolled a 1 on the white, you would place it on the white row and in the 1 column. And that's how that would work. So let's say, for instance, I'll just lay these out. We've got black 1 there. You've got your 3 blue, your 4 yellow, and then we've got 5 red. So what you're looking to do is to activate in any order that you want to get, let's say, 1 stone, 1 wood. This one will let you re-roll a die, so I can do that now. Re-rolling it is a 2, so it goes there now. And then this one would just get you 1 VP if you would like to take the VP. So in buying cards, you'll use these resources. Let's say, for example, this one was on wood. I could take 1 wood, replacing the die, getting a wood for that, taking this one here for another wood. So now, for example, I've got 2 wood. So I can use those resources after I'm done activating all these die to then buy cards. And cards that you can buy, like the lumber mill, will give you, it costs 2 wood to purchase. So I would get rid of that. And then I can put this card anywhere on any row in any column. So if I wanted to just replace it with the single wood that I would get off of the white one there, now I would get 2 wood if I activated that. So you're going throughout the game, and it'll be very differently on each board as you go, because people are going to be buying different cards, putting them in different rows and columns, and that's really the way the game goes. So one of the biggest things in the game that you're trying to go for are going to be trade ships. So trade ships are worth different values at the end of the game, and you have to have different resources to buy them. So 10 VP for this one at the end of the game. You have to have 3 of each resource to actually buy that. So since you only have 1 chance on your turn to buy those, because you have to throw all your resources away but 1 of each resource, you're trying to get all of those resources. So let's say, as the game played on, I had a bunch of different wood or a bunch of ore or stone. If I place on those, activate those, get a bunch of resources for those, then I can in turn buy those ships with those resources on that turn. If I tried to get there and I just couldn't get to it and I was missing it by a couple of resources, then you still have other buying options on the board. But if you can't buy anything or don't want to buy anything else, you would literally be discarding everything that you had except for 1 of each resource that would just go on the side of your board that you could use for the next turn. So the other thing you can do on your turn, other than grabbing resources and trying to buy locations or get a bigger quarry or a bigger lumber mill, is actually buying military cards like watchtowers, regular army, that were, instead of landing on here to get an actual stone, if you had placed this card there with a watchtower, you would be able to activate an additional 3 military to fight different cards, like possible bandits that have a defense value on the left and a VP value on the right. So you can use those to fight those. You can actually use, if you have cards that say you can fight other players with them or just regular army, so these are 1 apiece, you can actually use that military to fight people on the other boards. So if you had a card like the Manor that was on somebody else's board, it's got a defense value and then a VP value. So if I had 4 military, I could attack someone else's board, shut them down with this deactivate token that they have to spend a dice to pull back off, and actually collect those VPs. So either way you go, you can fight bandits or you can fight other players' boards and get some victory points. If at any time in the game you have put down a card that you just don't really want, you're getting tons of resources, so this lumber mill isn't looking as attractive to you as it was in the beginning of the game, but military might be the thing you're going after now. You can always buy more cards, like more military cards and stuff, and place them over the top of any of the cards that are on the board, the starting board, or cards that you've already placed. So it's really malleable whenever you get into the game. So that's a brief overview of the game, how it looks, how you would roll the dice and play. But for now, we'll go back to the table with Brett and myself. So here's an overview of the board and what it looks like after you've kind of played on the board a little bit here. And what we were talking about, the dice, is when you roll these dice, you can place those dice on the individual colors if you want to place those now, just so they get an idea. So red row, 6, blue row, 5, kind of gives you an overview of how those get laid. And then you can actually use those dice to activate that resource that you land on, or you can pick up a dice using it to move one of your dice 1 space left or right. So there's a couple different combinations that you can do with the dice while you're playing. So on your board, you ended up with this type of board. So what were you using in combination of? You said like the Merchant's Guild?
So Merchant Guild here, you would deactivate this square, and for every harvest in this entire row, which there's 1 of each resource at least in this row, you can take that type. So when I activate this, I get 2 wood, 2 iron, and a stone just from that 1 activation. So I'm getting 5 resources off of 1 activation.
And then you were also playing it off of, like you said, what, the marketplace?
The marketplace. So the marketplace card, if I pay 1 or 2 of a single resource, meaning a wood, a stone, or a iron, I get 2 of another resource. So once I activate my Merchant Guild on the top row and I get all of those resources, I can trade 1 or 2 of the same resource in and get 2 of any other resource per 1 paid. So this gives me 5. I trade in 2 off of this card, and now I have 7.
Okay, I got you.
So I also had cards like this church that allow me to use an ability of a location that has a die on it. So for instance, if I had landed here with a 4 and I had both of these activated, I can basically activate them twice, either this or this twice. So that is what ultimately allowed me to buy that final trade ship.
I got you. So my board was a little bit different. I was going kind of heavy on the resources, and I spent a little bit of my resources to buy some more military. So, for instance, the Watchtower gives you an additional 3 army that you can use to attack bandits. So when we talked about attacking bandits and attacking each other, the board comes with these bandit cards that you can fight. The defense is shown on the bottom left, and the victory points are what you get on the bottom right if you defeat those guys. If those 3 sections get exhausted, the game ends. And then also at the top, which is how we ended the game with the trade ships, there's 3 sections of trade ships. Once 2 of those 3 go out, then the game is over as well. There's some other variants, like if you fill up 2 of your columns completely full, they've got no deactivation tokens on it. They can choose to end the game at that point, but you don't have to. So those are a few different ways you can change the game. So we've played several games of Dice City over the last few months, and it is a really fun game. I do like to play it. It plays well at, you can even play against the board at 1 player, but it plays well even at 4 players. I don't feel like we do too much damage to each other every game that we've played. We're starting to get there, but I really like to build up my resources personally and try to get those trade ships. Those trade ships need a lot of resources, and you have to gather all of those resources, like we said, in just 1 turn. Because at the end of your turn, you lose every resource that you've gathered except 1 of each type that you can keep for the next round. So I like to gather up my resources, try to grab those trade ships. Whenever I've done that, I've usually pulled out the win. And whenever I do something else, I get close, but I don't feel like I can get there. How do you feel? Like, what do you like to play when you're doing it?
I'm a Euro gamer guy, so if anybody out there is familiar with like Stone Age, those kind of games where you can do lots of different things, I like to do lots of different things.
Combinations and stuff.
So for this, I like to get cards that play off of other cards. Same thing really. It's the ultimate goal is for me is always to try and get those trade ships. But I do that through comboing multiple cards off of one another.
So you feel like picking up the nice cards, like the Merchant's Guild, and like you comboed with the Marketplace is a good
Well, yeah, this is the meat of the game here. So this is what's going to change everything. So
location cards.
some of the hard part about this game is if you intend at the very beginning to get certain cards, if you've played enough that you know what cards you want to get, those cards may not come up for you. So while you want to have a strategy, you have to be a little open-ended and you have to kind of flow a little bit with what cards come up on the board.
And the same thing with playing. There was a lot of times where we bought a card, placed a card, because you can place it anywhere that you want, but you lose the ability that's underneath the card. You roll your dice and you go to place it, and then you just don't roll that number that you need in that row to actually play that card. So then you're burning dice to move that row's dice over to possibly play that. So it's a pretty cool game.
A lot of
I like
times
it.
you're building your board and you're kind of getting it laid out how you want, and you're just waiting for the opportunity to use it. So it'll play out where 4 or 5 turns in a row you're kind of just off, or you're missing that one card that you need to combo. You're kind of biding your time a little bit and trying to ramp up other pieces to wait for the one chance to use it all at one time. So yeah.
So this game has a ton of replayability. AEG also has 3 different expansions that you can get for this game right now. They've got All That Glitters expansion, the Crossroads expansion, and by Royal Decree expansion. All these expansions will give you a different depth and a different playability to the game, adding in different cards. All That Glitters introduces gold, which is a limited resource, and they also expand the cards assortment for your locations. Like this one will introduce the warehouse and the hospital, for example. In the Crossroads expansion, it plays off the basic premise of the original game, but it lets you go with rows and columns now, which can give you a ton more replayability. It also took the gold idea from the first expansion and it added more options of what you can do with the gold. So there's banks that they introduce and things like that on that expansion. And the final expansion is by Royal Decree. So it adds in a double-sided trading board, more location cards, and 18 Queen Plan cards that give you a ton of replayability, some secret cards that no one knows that you have, and some different things that you can go after with the game. All 3 of those expansions are something that I might shoot later on Inside Games. But for now, we're just going to kind of talk about the base game. So when I play Dice City, I get that this game isn't going to probably be for everyone. I think it's more of a family type game. And you can play with your friends. We brought it out on some of our game days and things like that, and it's gone over pretty well. But I've also got family members and friends that really wouldn't like this game at all because they want to play a more in-depth game. What do you think?
Yeah, I think this game would be good for kids for sure. You can explain this game in a couple minutes, the basics, and they can pick up and run with it. But at the same time, it's good for us that we play a lot of games, and you can really get pretty in depth with this game as well. So you can go kind of easy, if you have children or younger players that are not kind of in tune with the army portion of it. You could kind of go easy on them and not shut down so many of their resources and things. And then with the more advanced players, you can kind of go at each other a little bit more with that side of things. So yeah, I think it scales for younger or older players, and all the way down to 10, 12 years old. You can explain this to somebody with no problem. And the artwork is fantastic. It's very cartoony.
Yeah.
So I think that plays in well with family as well.
Cool. So if anybody at home has played this game and would like to comment below on strategies that they thought worked or did not work, we'd love to hear about it. And until next time, oh, no. You want me to smile? I'm Ryan Sutton, and today on Inside Games, let's take a look at AEG Dice City. Hi. No. Should I like be? Should I sit up?
That you have.
In games. So the cool thing that, oh my God. Here we go.